Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Ashley if you are new. And if you are new, please go ahead and stop what you're doing. Do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button as well as that notifications bell so that you and I can become acquainted and so we can do things like this on the regular. So I'm actually coming in today with a video that is beyond overdue. Truant, tardy for the party, if you will. And shout out to the girl wig. But basically I'm coming in with the final video of my Paris Chronicles, Paris series, the anthology. I probably didn't even use that word correctly, but that happens from time to time. But of course, as some of you guys may know, I did go to Paris and it was my first trip to Paris about, we'll say about 2 months ago or so, maybe 2.5 months or so ago. I did drop 2 vlogs. In addition to that, I dropped a Paris haul video, and I promised that I would put out some tips, some travel tips, some things that I did to kind of plan my trips, to plan my trip that is, and to give you guys some tips and some things that I did to make the trip happen essentially. Some of you guys commented on a few of my videos saying that you also have plans to go to Paris soon, next year specifically. So I wanted to come in and give you guys some of the tips and tricks that I use to plan the trip, and some tips that I can also provide that I learned once I got over there. By no means am I an expert on all things France, but I can definitely help out and share some of my tips. So with that being said, let's get into it. So the first tip that I have is going to be the most obvious of all the tips, and that is to do your research. This is how I was able to get the best price and get the best value from my hotel to specifically the airline that we decided to fly with. Now, I live in Atlanta, and as you know, Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson Airport is quote unquote the busiest airport in the world. So you would think that you would be able to get a relatively inexpensive flight, direct flight that is, to Paris from Atlanta, but that isn't necessarily the case. For the time frame that we were going, like for example, Delta has direct flight. Not all the airlines have direct flights from Atlanta to Paris. Delta does, but for the time that we were going, it was like maybe $2,400 for a direct flight. A direct flight from Atlanta to Paris is like an 8.5 hour flight, $2,400. Now, using Google Flights, which is going to be your best friend, if that's not already one of your best friends, you need to make it one of your best friends. Google Flights. Add it to your browser, add it as a favorites tab on your computer. Just get familiar, girl, because that's how you're going to get the best pricing from these airlines. So we were pretty flexible as it pertains to the time that we were leaving, but we did know that we wanted to go like around August, September, October. So there was like 3 months in there. So I was kind of looking at Google Flights. Of course, you can put in your departure city as well as your arrival city, and then you can kind of search week over week, month over month, and you can see a plethora of airlines and the pricing that they had, as well as the duration of the flight. It was one of the less expensive times to go. It's like after travel season and right before Fashion Week, so it was kind of like a sweet spot from a travel time frame standpoint. So we knew that this was going to be the least expensive time to go with the best weather. So I kind of looked at Google Flights week over week, and I saw that Turkish Airlines had the best price for what we were wanting to do. That didn't have like a super long layover. To get the best bang for our buck, we paid about $9.80 for our ticket. We only had like a 3-hour layover in Istanbul, and that included our seat selection to and from, and it also included a checked luggage as well as a carry-on. So that was the best bang for our buck for that time frame, and that again was $9.80. Now, again, if we would have took like Delta, we could have had a direct flight. It only had like an 8-hour travel time, which is even better, but that would have been like at least double. So in addition to doing your research, I highly, highly recommend that you make sure that you pack the essentials. Remember that the European Union has different plugs for their outlets than we do. So if you want to be able to use your electronics, which I know you do, you have to pack the proper converter. You can get it off Amazon. I'll have it linked down below, the one that I got, but their their converters for their chargers, again, and their electrical outlets are different. So make sure that you have the proper electronic converter. In addition to that, you need to make sure that on your flight, I don't care if you are going to go ahead and splurge and go for your direct flight, or if you have 1 or 2 layovers, please get you some compression socks. Excuse me, you gotta have some compression socks, girl, because I know that it reminded me of this past season of Succession. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but if you know that compression socks probably would have prevented one of those major things from happening this past season. But I see why now, because when you are on a long flight, your legs and your feet will swell up like so bad. You will have so much retention. If you know, that was my longest flight I've ever taken. I've never been anywhere longer than like a 4-hour flight to the Caribbean. So I definitely was super happy that I picked up one of those tips from somebody on TikTok. Compression socks are gonna be your best friend. Other than that, I would say when you're traveling around the city, I would suggest having a crossbody, pocketers, and stuff like that. I didn't experience anything like that. I didn't see nobody walking up to me with a clipboard for a survey. Any of the things that you hear about Paris, we didn't encounter any of that stuff. The only thing that I might have encountered was a drunk man at the Chinese restaurant the night before I left. And he was just, just being extra friendly, but I was about to give him one of these. But yeah, so I would definitely, but even because you are traveling abroad and you want to make sure that everything that is super important is on your person. So I recommend a crossbody when you're walking through the city, because you'll be able to have like your most important things on you, primarily your passport, because you're going to need to keep up with that, and your credit cards and stuff like that. But I would keep the crossbody on me. So those are essentially in addition to like your other stuff that you must have, but you got to have that converter from the American to European electronic converter. You have to have that. You have to have some compression socks. If you know, And then of course, I would definitely recommend having a crossbody bag. I have my crossbody, and of course crossbodies they're only so big because you're going to have it on your body. So in addition to my crossbody, I also had a tote bag with like some other stuff that was not as important, just in case something was to pop off. But crossbody is going to be your best friend, the converter, and the compression socks. So the second thing I want to talk about as it pertains to Paris travel tips is going to be the VAT refund process. So it's quite likely that if you are watching this video, you're probably gonna end up buying something over there when you go to Paris. It's cheaper to get designer goods in France because most of them are made over there. So you have Chanel, you have Goyard, you have Hermes, you have Louis Vuitton, you have Celine, you have all the girls. Even if they're not made in France, even if they're an Italian brand like who's an Italian brand? Versace, Gucci, something like that. Because it's in Europe, you're going to pay less than you would pay over here in America. So the VAT refund is typically a disc or a refund. It's essentially the tax. So one thing about over there, when you pay for something in euros, the price that you see is the price that you pay. So it's not like, oh, it's $100 plus 10% tax in this, or 9% tax down there in the city of Atlanta. If it's €100 in Europe, then it's €100. You don't have to pay anything in addition to that. So the tax is already factored into the euro price. Because you are not a citizen of the European Union, when you go to the airport, if you have the paperwork that is going to be provided to you from whoever you bought this particular item from, you'll be able to get back 10 to 12% tax, and that's called the VAT refund. So for example, I picked up the Goyard St. Louis GM in the color navy when I was in Paris. It retails for $18.90 plus tax in the States, which in my city, Atlanta, Georgia, Fulton County, would have been like over $2,000. I paid $1,600. That's after the euro. It was like 15 something in euro. So the USD equivalent would have been like 1601 to be exact. In addition to the $16.01, I also got $178 back for my VAT refund for this bag. So overall, I saved over $600 by purchasing this bag in Paris versus in... Yeah, so the way that the VAT exchange works as far as the refund is if you are purchasing items that are more than €100, then in the store, they're going to fill out the forms, the paperwork for you. You have to have your passport with you. That's another tip. Let's go ahead and add that in there as passport. That's another reason why you want to have your crossbody on your person, because when you're out shopping, if you are spending over €100 on merchandise, then they're going to do the VAT refund. They're going to provide you with the VAT paperwork that you're going to turn into the airport once you get to Charles de Gaulle. Most likely you're going to be going to Charles de Gaulle versus Orly, but whatever airport you're going to, when you leave France going back home, you're going to go through the VAT refund process. And it's quick and easy. It's not a whole process like it sounds like. But again, if you spend over €100 at a store, they're going to fill out this paperwork for you. They're going to ask for your passport, and they're going to provide you with the paperwork that you're going to turn into the kiosk at the airport. Now, if you just basically scan this paperwork through the airport as you're leaving on your departing flight to go back home, and most of the time it's going to scan as green, which means you're good to go. In about 2 to 3 weeks, you're going to get your refund back on whatever credit card you use. Sometimes, depending on how much money you spend, if you spend over, I think maybe like $1,000 or €1,000, you might get flagged to go to the customs agent or to the agent at the VAT refund kiosk, which again is no problem. They'll just, check your paperwork, check for your item, and keep you on your way. But if and when it doesn't go through green and you go through red and you have to go to an actual agent, it does take much longer to receive your refund. So like this particular Goyard refund that I got, that's $178. I just got that back like 2 or 3 days ago, girl. And that was I was in Europe 2 or 3 months ago. So it took that much longer because the item was a little bit more expensive. It was flagged as a red item and I had to go to the kiosk. So if you get one of those, then you will have to wait a little bit longer, but you will get your money back eventually, and it will be automatically credited back to your credit card. Another tip is to try to use a credit card or a debit card that does not have foreign transaction fees. Most cards charge, I would say, between 1% and 2% on foreign transactions, meaning that if you use your card in another country. Now, one of my cards did not charge a foreign transaction fee, so that was good. So I used that card primarily. But you don't want to, it's only 1 or 2%, but that does add up and that does take away from whatever you're buying, from the savings of whatever you're buying. So I definitely recommend calling your credit cards, calling your bank before you go over there to let them know that you are, one, going over there so you're able to use your card freely, but also to check to see if there are any foreign transaction fees, because if there are, you might want to use something else. Another tip is to, again, it's one of the obvious tips, but that is to plan and make reservations. Probably one of the top 5 most popular cities in the world. So a lot of the restaurants are very much viral. A lot of the museums are very much, people know where they want to go. So if you already know that you need to go to the Louvre and that you want to go to Giraffe, or that you want to go to L'Avenue or something like that, I definitely recommend that you purchase your tickets in advance, but also if you don't even purchase your tourist sightseeing museum tickets in advance, if you know that there is a restaurant that you want to go to that's extremely popular, again, like Giraffe, girl, make your reservations now. And I say that because we wanted to go to Giraffe really bad. That's one of Giraffe, but I think they call it Giraffe, girl. But we wanted to go there really bad, but I literally tried to make reservations a month before we went and I could not get them, girl. So just make sure that you make reservations, and also that you plan in advance. Again, these are kind of given tips, but I just want to put that in there as a reminder. Get your tickets in advance because they're typically going to be less expensive, and also make your reservations in advance because, girl, the girls be on it. Yeah, so another tip I would have is to learn some basic words. I'm not saying you need to become fluent in French, like how realistic is that for everybody who wants to go to Paris? However, I think a lot of the words, like basic words, they are expected and they are also respected. So, for example, and also let me say this, most people, especially in like super popular like tourist areas, they know how to speak French as well as English, but that you don't know what language a person speaks until that person speaks, essentially. So most people are going to greet you with a bonjour or a ça va, which is good morning or hello or how are you. So those are basic things that you can learn. You don't have, like I said, you don't have to get a Rosetta Stone, girl. You don't have to get on Babbel and try to become fluent in French, because again, most people are going to know how to speak English. But you will run into certain people that don't know how to speak English. And I also think that it is a polite thing to do is to greet people in their native country that you are visiting in their native tongue. Now, are you going to be speaking that thing and saying 15 sentences back to back in their native tongue? Absolutely not. But can you learn how to say bonjour? Yes. Can you learn how to say bonsoir, which is good night? Yes. Can you learn how to say ça va, which is how are you, or I think that's how are you. Don't give me the line. So the last tip I have is transportation. Don't be afraid to take the metro. I'm not somebody who takes the train normally. I just took the MARTA for the first time in my life this past summer for the Beyonce concert. So that just goes to show I'm not necessarily a train person. You don't necessarily have to be in my city, but I did take the train in Paris. We did take quite a few Ubers as well, but on Sunday, like the last day before I left, I did take the train from like our hotel. We stayed in the 15th arrondissement. So that is not extremely close as far as like walking distance to the city. So I did take the train. It was probably like a freaking less than 15-minute train ride. And I took that from where we were staying to Galeries Lafayette, which I think is in the, don't give me the line, girl. I want to say it's in the 7th. It might be in the 7th or it might be in the 3rd. Don't give me the line. But I took it to Galeries Lafayette. Huge, amazing, most amazing department store I ever seen in my entire life. Again, I will have all of my Paris Chronicles linked down below, so you'll be able to see me in the Galeries Lafayette. But I did take the train again from our hotel into the Opera District, which is where this particular department store is. And it was super easy. I want to say it was like, I don't know how many euros it was, but it was definitely a fraction of the price to take an Uber to and from the hotel. And it was super fast. It probably was even quicker, of course, because it's the train. It was even quicker than taking an Uber because you don't have to deal with like all of that traffic. So be open to taking the train. It's easy, it's safe, it's clean for the most part for a major city. And yeah, and I would highly recommend that as well. So kind of my last, is that Paris is not going anywhere. A trip, and you want to cram everything into the same trip, so that might make you want to prolong your trip, add more days. If you have the means to do so, please by all means do that. If you have like a week or two, because if you're somebody like me that has obsessed over Paris and all things French for quite some time, there's quite a few places that you want to go. You might want to go to Disney, you might want to go to the outlets, you might want to go to Versailles. These are all things that are outside of the city. There's so many museums, there's so many different neighborhoods, there's so many restaurants, there's so many stores, there's just so much that you can do. And then if you're talking about outside of Paris, quickly you can get to like London, you can get to Milan, you can get to all the European cities pretty quickly once you're over there. So you might have so many things that you can do, and that might make you prolong your trip because you feel like you need to maybe save up, or you need to just wait till you have the time. Just know that Paris is not going anywhere. Not only do you want to probably do everything and cram it all into the first trip, but you probably want to buy a whole lot and just go crazy. Trust me when I say I wanted to go crazy, and I could have went crazier than I actually went, but I said, you know what? I love Paris, and I definitely plan on going back at least once or twice a year. So just feel free to just, take it easy. Get your first trip in, get some things, see some things, but just know that you can always go back And and when you go back for the second, third, fourth, fifth time, you'll know even more about the culture, about the city, you'll even know more of the language as you continue to go back. So yeah, so that's just my last kind of tip, if you will. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. If you plan on going to Paris, please comment down below. If there's any questions that you may have as it pertains to my trip, please comment down below. I'm super happy to help and answer any questions that you may have and make any recommendations that you may have as well. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys and dolls in the next video.